Welcome back, everybody. Today I have a guide for DANJIN, the 4-star Havoc powerhouse who recently took the world by storm for being a skill issue character. But now she's even stronger with some recently discovered tech. In this video, I'll be going over her kit, how to play her, the best weapons and echoes for her, who to pair with her, and so much more. Most currently aren't able to see DANJIN's final form since she has one of the most unique playstyles in losing health in exchange for damage. But after enough testing and research into the character, she really deserves more appreciation and love as one half of the most OP combo in the game right now. Let's get into it. DANJIN's kit is pretty complex on paper, but I'll do my best to break it down here because it really isn't that hard once you understand the idea. Her heavy and basic attacks are the core of her gameplay loop, and certain attacks transform or unlocked based on conditions or combos that you perform together. DANJIN's resonant skill, Crimson Fragment, when cast by itself, simply applies havoc damage and just hits the enemy. And side note, this first initial hit is just called Crimson Gleam. Execution, or her basic attack, is a 3-hit combo, and her Resonance Liberation, aka Ultimate, is a decent sized nuke. Now when DANJIN dodges, she can perform a basic attack to deal what's called a dodge counter, but if you use her resonance skill after a dodge counter, you perform Ruby Shades, which is an attack that also deals good damage. Now here's where things get complicated. To use Crimson Fragment, DANJIN must sacrifice 3% of her max HP. The good news is that she can't drop below 1% health in doing so you're safe to spam this so long as you don't get hit. But the big brain part about Crimson Fragment is how and when to cast each version of it. To activate the first variation, known as Crimson Erosion, use your Resonance skill after performing a dodge counter, or activate the ability after using an intro effect. Doing so allows you to strike 2 times and does decent damage. And while doing so, you do also apply Incinerating Will, which is a 20% damage increase to your attacks. That is a 3-hit combo, performable when DANJIN uses her Resonance skill after 3 basic attacks. Outside of her heavy attack that you activate when her Forte circuit bar is full, Sanguine Pulse is your bread and butter big damage. On the topic of Forte circuits, when you press and hold your basic attack when DANJIN has 60 Ruby Blossom, aka her resource bar, she activates a hard-hitting attack that counts as heavy damage and heals her. And if you instead activate this at 120 Ruby Blossom instead of 60, you activate an even harder hitting Scatter Bloom. But let's talk about how this all fits together. Despite how long explaining skills took, DANJIN really only has one goal when playing her. Apply the 20% damage increase for the 2-hit combo, and then go to town spamming her 3-hit combo, aka Sanguine Pulse. And once you've gained enough Ruby Blossoms, hold down your basic attack and unleash a fully charged Scatter Bloom to pop the enemy. Believe it or not though, that's pretty much all you need to know. Keep in mind though that Incinerating Will, aka the 20% damage increase, only lasts 12 seconds, so you will have to re-perform the 2-hit combo every so often. Just make sure to properly align outro and intro effects so you have buffs or attack increases before your big damage combos. This all sounds simple, right? Well, wrong, because there's actually a super strong strategy right now that has been developed involving a special echo known as Dreamless and pairing DANJIN alongside the Havoc Rover. I'll have a whole special section dedicated to this later, but just know that pairing Rover with DANJIN is a must. Now onto her weapon, though this is pretty straightforward. If you didn't already notice, WutheringWaves' original intended name was Wuthering Swords, since every free character that they give you wants one. Thankfully, if you chose the Commando of Conviction from the 4-star weapon selector we received at the start of the game, the sword is insane value for your account. Every single damage-dealing swordsman in the game receives great value when using it, and DANJIN is no different. Commando of Conviction has barely any conditions for its effect to start working, and the effect of receiving a 15% attack increase for 15 seconds. Your alternatives to the Commando of Conviction are decent but not as valuable, with one exception. Lunar Cutter and Lumen Gloss perform around the same for DANJIN, and their passives, though conditional, do not actually affect DANJIN negatively. But Sword 18 is interesting since it appears specifically designed for DANJIN's low health risky playstyle, and charts quite nicely in damage tests. Every part of this weapon's passive effects synergizes with how she would already be approaching fights, so this is a standout option if you didn't pick Commando of Conviction, or if you decide to use that weapon on someone like Havoc Rover instead. Side note, it is also craftable, so you'll always have access to it assuming you enjoy mining rocks. Now, onto the RNG. In the current version of WutheringWaves, there's a significant lack of Echo EXP that we could use to upgrade our Echoes and therefore give our Resonators more stats, and investing in Echoes that look bad feels bad. But truthfully, you'll have to upgrade a lot of these pieces anyway if you don't want to run out of resources extremely quickly. For her Echoes, Dreamless is hands down the best option in terms of the one that you are going to be using in battle, mainly because of how it pairs element damage wise and the actual usability of the attack it has, and the scaling of how much damage it does alongside DANJIN's buffs. And that isn't even taking into consideration the ability to swap, cancel, or remove the long animation that Dreamless normally performs when you activate them in battle. But outside of this, the Havoc Wolf, the Rose Shroom, and any combination of one-cost Havoc Echoes like the Young Shroom or the Tic Tac will suffice when trying to build out your Echoes. But in terms of main stats, you're looking for crit chance or crit damage on your 4-cost Echo. On your 3 costs, you're looking for element damage, aka Havoc in this case. And for your 2 1-cost Echoes, you're looking for attack percentage instead. And on the topic of substats, maintaining a balanced 1:2 ratio for crit rate to crit damage is ideal, but outside of this, looking for attack percent or heavy and resonance damage increases are great given that her biggest damage share is mostly from these 2 sources. As a reminder though, if you choose to chase these perfect stats recklessly, you will end up punished unless you are a whale, and not being able to properly upgrade or invest in another character will harm your account, assuming this means that you aren't able to gear a character like Havoc Rover, who does really push DANJIN over the edge. But on that note, let's talk about pairings and team compositions. The Havoc Rover pairs insanely well with DANJIN since her outro effect buffs Havoc damage, and the Rover of course can abuse this very well. The main character does have high burst damage with their ultimate, but they also have the ability to use Dreamless, who scales insanely well with DANJIN's outro skill as well. For supports, Verena, Baiji, and DANJIN all perform well depending on who you have or how powerful you want the combo to be, and it makes sense. These characters provide damage increases, they vacuum up enemies, they heal, all of this is decent value. But honestly, the stars of the show are not any of these supports, it's the dynamic duo of Havoc Rover and DANJIN. The combo do an absolutely thumbnail clickbait amount of damage in a comically short amount of time. To be clear, I'm not sure why they gave Spectral Rover a 400% damage scaling multiplier on their ultimate, but instead decided to give Havoc Rover a 900% scaling multiplier. But honestly, I'm not complaining. To perform the combo properly, you activate DANJIN's outro skill that boosts Havoc damage, and you pair this with the Rover's ultimate into then Dreamless cast. But right as Rover's Dreamless Echo is summoned, you quickly swap out or cancel and remove the long animation from the first Echo and have DANJIN cast Dreamless herself as well. And thus, the double Dreamless. To be clear, the back-to-back looks really sick and is funny when blowing things up in casual content, but there is actual insane value to just doing a proper rotation and squeezing out as much damage as possible and spacing the 2 Dreamless casts in a proper way. And finally, although a lot of the last section was about Rover and DANJIN together, let's break down DANJIN's strengths and weaknesses in particular. For strengths, as I mentioned previously, she is one half of the Havoc Dream Team when it comes to 2 Dreamlesses and doing insane damage. And let's not lie to ourselves, the combo is absolutely out of this world in terms of damage, and I'm sure you don't need convincing how OP this pairing is. She herself also offers a lot of single target damage, even if you aren't using her alongside the Havoc Rover. But a very underrated and underreported aspect of her kit is that despite her being low health in most cases, she does also boast having a self-heal with her heavy attack that is chargeable even if you are outside of combat. Other characters like Gion or Calcharo are forced to swap to Baiji or Verena to apply healing, but DANJIN can heal herself once she gains enough of her Concerto energy and then just heals herself. So assuming that you need a solid single target damage dealer who can be independent and can also dish out great DPS, she is a solid choice, turned amazing, especially if you end up pairing her alongside Rover in the OP Dream Team. But now for the weaknesses. Her single target nature does leave quite a lot to be desired when it comes to mobbing and fighting in AoE encounters, but Dreamless does cover a lot of these issues. Her pairing with Rover is nice, but keep in mind that she isn't the easiest to play despite Rover being quite simple. And on that note, she is prone to dying easily, especially if you aren't paying attention to her health. I mean, seriously, you go through a lot of her health quickly, especially if you're spamming her E. Now, you're bound to hear this from one source or another, but if you really want to see the trauma of DANJIN firsthand, try asking a DANJIN main if they stay on her when they're picking mints or when they're adventuring out in the overworld. You'll see what I mean. And finally, though she does do great damage, I should also mention that the current enemies in the Tower of Adversity do also have Havoc resistance, and that is a huge setback, of course, for characters that do end up dealing Havoc damage. And to illustrate that, when I was showing off the combo earlier, and I was doing literally no damage when in any other encounter I would be one-shotting these enemies. So at least right now, you may want to hold off from fighting these encounters, or you may need to take another elemental DPS so that you can eliminate the Havoc resistant characters and continue on with your game. But there you have it, guys, the complete guide to DANJIN, how exactly to play her, why she's strong, how to pair her and make her super OP, everything in between. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope this video was a little bit easier to follow and or understand. Personally, when I've been seeing the combos with Havoc, Rover, and DANJIN right now, they felt more like showcases as opposed to guides on how to play them, so I hope this clears up some confusion. Side note, playing the OP combo does require you to have some investment in Havoc Rover, both in terms of build and knowing how to play them, but it'll definitely be worth it because this is arguably one of the most budget teams in the entire game, since it's 2 4 costs that do about the same damage as a character like Gion or even Calcharo. Anyways though, guys, thank you again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about DANJIN, if you think she's good, if you think she's cool, bad, etc. And I'll see you all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night. YouTube thinks that you would really enjoy this video, and I agree with them. You should go check it out. Really cool. Thanks.